Alright, then we started. What's up, guys? So this afternoon, I've got a great guest. You guys might not know Jake actually, but Jake is pretty much the Jordan Spieth of Overwatch. I actually started watching Jake before the World Cup, stalking his stream and whatnot. Personally, I got into Overwatch mainly because my golf course suggested that during the off season, which was two off seasons ago, that I picked up a competitive game. And this off season, I got to see my man Jake play in the World Cup and the first split of the Overwatch League. So, you know, your boy's a grinder and Jake's also a grinder. Plus, DPS God, by the way. So put your hands up for my mans. And how you feeling today, Jake?
Yo, what up? It's great to be here.
It's great to have you here as well. Some of my audience might not quite know who you are. So, any chance you can take us back to the very beginning? You know, and how did you get involved with competitive gaming as well?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a pro gamer right now for the Houston Outlaws, playing in the Overwatch League. But it all started, I think, with Team Fortress 2. You know, when I was coming up, like in high school and then a little bit of college, I was really interested in competitive TF2. Even though there was never like a shred of a chance to really be a professional player, there was no way to make a living off that game. But when Overwatch came out, I knew that it would be different because Blizzard always supports their games and always makes sure that they're successful. And they really came through on that front with Overwatch. So it was a game that I've, from day one, I was like grinding, trying to be a competitive player. And it got lucky a few times, worked hard a few times, and it worked out in the end.
Nice. So so Overwatch is your first game that you went pro in then?
Yeah, I mean, I was in ESEA Invite in Team Fortress 2, which is like technically the highest level of competition. Yeah. But I mean, even at that level, there was no sponsors or anything. So I was not even though I was at the highest level, I wasn't quote unquote a professional until Overwatch came around.
Yeah, I did watch one of the videos you were explaining the very first laptop, I think it was, that you played Overwatch on. How was it to play the game on that? I think it was like 30 FPS.
Yeah, I mean, right when the game came out, I was studying abroad in the Netherlands, and I only had my laptop, so I just made like a boot camp Windows partition and installed Overwatch and started playing. It was just terrible frames and basically the worst setup I've ever played on, but made it work, made it happen. Still grinded so much that season that I was top 500 in Europe, even on the laptop. So I think from that point, I kind of knew, I was like, well, once I get on a real setup, I can take this game over.
All right, so back then, Winston main, by the way, or what?
Yeah, exactly. Winston and Roadhog were my top two, and then I ended up being like a Roadhog player for the first few months. I was a competitor just because that was, he's a really powerful character. You kind of wanted him in every situation, in his original strength.
I mean, you were kind of a noob. I mean, you're using a one-shot hook character. I mean, that's retarded. But
I'll do whatever it takes to get the W's.
I mean, yeah, that's why people need to shut up about the scatter. You went to college in the Netherlands, so when you started Overwatch, you were still in college, or what happened there?
No, I didn't go to college overall in the Netherlands. I went into a small school in Ohio, but I was just studying abroad for the semester that Overwatch happened to come out. So I just happened to be in the Netherlands. But I did 3.5 years at Denison University in Ohio, which is a small liberal arts college. I didn't quite finish my degree, but I'm like 2 classes away, and they've allowed me to defer completion indefinitely, so I can come back probably whenever my pro career is done, realistically, and just finish a couple courses, get a degree.
All right. So was it when Overwatch came out that you were like, okay, I want to go pro in this, or was it like maybe after a couple of months of playing?
Sorry, what was that?
When Overwatch came out, were you like, okay, I want to go pro in this, or was it after a couple of months?
Yeah, I mean, before it came out. It was like when they announced the game, and I saw like the the cinematic trailers. I was like, yeah, okay, I knew that it was going to be a game that was similar enough to TF2, like in the fundamental just mechanics. Like there are projectiles, you have to aim, and there's hit scan, you have to aim, and like those fundamental mechanics, I felt like I would already have an advantage in the game just because I had spent so much time in TF2 and I was such a competitive player in TF2 that I felt like there would be no player that would just have a head start on me, with the exception of people who are already in the beta.
Yeah.
I applied to the beta the first day, but I unfortunately never got in. So for me, it was just like once I by the time I actually got the game, I was far beyond the point of like, yeah, I really want to go pro. Like I was feeling that way, I think, throughout the beta. I was just watching, even though I couldn't play. Felt like this is definitely the game I want to compete in.
Yeah. Okay, so if that was before the game came out, so I would say you set yourself a goal to go pro. Then what is the skills that you set yourself to achieve the goal? Like, where were you like, okay, so I want to go pro, but this is what I need to do it?
I mean, in a sense, there's like the individual aspect of it, which is super important, where you just have to put in a ton of work and time and just become better at the game. But I think that was honestly less important, in the early days than the other set of skills, which is like how to be a good team player, how to lead a team, joining a team, finding a team, like all those skills and things that go into being on a successful team. I felt like actually ended up being more important than just raw skill, because Overwatch is first and foremost a team game, and team decision making and coordination beats individual skill almost every time. So I think for me, and especially with my first team, Bird Noises, we really focused on how do we be the best team, rather than thinking of it as like how do we each become the best individual player we can be. Although you're also thinking about that. I mean, the team stuff definitely came first. So I think for me, it was like Bird Noises and all the things I learned playing with that squad were super big for me and my competitive future.
Yeah. Speaking of all that team stuff and whatnot, what do you think made you take the biggest strides forward? Strides meaning mechanical skill, team play, and I guess also ladder, SR comes into it.
I think for me, I've always been like a grinder. Like I've always had the perspective that the only thing that separates, you and the best player in the world is that they work harder than you.
Yeah.
That there's no like fundamental ability that anybody has that's like, that you can't overcome. Basically, nobody's born special and unbeatable. They probably just work harder than you. So for me, I always put in the hours, even when we were signed under Hammers and Luminosity Gaming as LG Evil. Even when we were signed, I never stopped grinding, never stopped, like really working hard and trying to be the best. I think also for me, Team USA was like a huge opportunity to grow. So being selected to play on the national team for the United States was awesome, because I really came to really, really like the players that I played with. And I'm really happy that I ended up being on a team with a few of them. But I learned so much from that team and all those players. They made me a better teammate. They made me a better player. And it was also a huge motivator for me, because I was like, wow, this is an incredible chance to prove my skill on the world stage. So I think as soon as I was in that trial process, I probably worked harder than I'd ever worked in my life to become a better player and just, grind as hard as possible.
Yeah. I've also always wondered, if you started out playing Winston and Roadhog at a crappy laptop, then how did you come to playing DPS class?
Well, I would always played DPS, or I guess the DPS equivalent in other games. Like, it always played like fragging characters rather than supporting characters or like space creating characters. So I think the DPS role came naturally to me in that sense. But I also feel like I was able to bring some stuff from the tanking role into the DPS role, like focus on calling. I know a lot of DPS players like don't call very much, or just rarely call, especially in high intensity situations, because you just need to hit the shots at the end of the day, and that's like more important than anything you could say. But for me as a player, I've been like, I think I call a lot more than most DPS, and I'm able to be like something of like a TL in some situations, team leader, which is really good, I think, on some DPS characters. Like some styles like Soldier and Junkrat really lend themselves to that, where they're not as mechanically demanding as a character like Tracer or Genji, but so letting your team know exactly what you're doing and who's low and what they can follow up on is like a really, really valuable thing, because it allows every one of your teammates to be more effective. So for me, like, I think I was able to sort of get that middle ground between being a tank and a DPS player, where I'm helping to like lead the team and make sure everyone is being as effective as they can be. But I'm also in the DPS role, which is a little bit non-traditional.
Yeah. And to be fair, it kind of still is, but back in the day, Roadhog was basically DPS that fed and one-shot itself.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and that's the thing. When I was playing Road, I was like, I was a pretty strong player, I would say, in North America, and Roadhog just aiming right clicks and hooks and stuff. So I think I felt like I already had like a pretty pretty strong aim, and I wanted to leverage that in a role that really puts that to the test.
Yeah, and obviously you're pro now, but before you did reach your goal of becoming pro, who are the people who are actually supporting you through this?
I'd say my family definitely. Well, not before I went pro. Like after I got signed my first team, I didn't even tell my parents or anybody, and that I was signed, or that I was trying to become signed, until I actually got signed to a pro team. I didn't tell them how much I was playing or like what I was trying to do, you know, because I honestly didn't think they'd understand or really be supportive, at least until I actually had something to show for it, like a paycheck. So when I was first signed, I was able to like call my parents and be like, yeah, let's go. By the way, I'm doing this. And they're like, well, that's fine as long as it doesn't interfere with your schoolwork, I guess. But over time, I think as they come to see that there's like a real career here, and that it's actually, you know, something tangible, something within reach, it's that's definitely really changed things for them. I think my parents were always like, you know, they don't want me playing video games all day if they think that it's just like a waste of time. But if they see that there's actually a future in it, a potential in it, then they're going to support me all the way. So definitely, as soon as the journey really got underway, I would say that my parents were super supportive. Overall, though, I think you know, esports is kind of unique in that it's a very personal journey. Like, you know, the first, 10 years of your practice is going to be by yourself. You know, there's not going to be any teams or, you know, coaches or people to support you, people disagree with you. Like, you know, it's everyone starts in their bedroom, right? Just playing games because they love playing games. So I think what's really interesting is that everybody has that kind of untold story of like their first 5 to 10 years gaming before they go pro. Is just like, you know, that all is just organic. It's just, you know, nobody's like, it's not like hockey where maybe you show some insane talent or something and you start getting groomed, or, you know, in traditional sports. I mean, esports is just kind of wild west until you are actually at the point where you're ready to start competing.
Yeah.
So the lack of like a natural, you know, progression definitely makes things a bit weird in esports.
It's quite understandable. All right, so as more of a I'm not gonna tell no one until I make it, and then I'll have the leverage of a paycheck for you to support my.
Yeah, I mean, I was in college, so like, I mean, what am I gonna say? Hey, mom, by the way, I'm trying to go pro and playing video games. She's gonna be like, what the hell? Like, what are you doing with your life? So I mean, I don't think it was unreasonable of them to be unsupportive at the time, but I kind of knew that was the case. So I kind of felt like I had to just go it alone and you know, stay strong.
All right.
But I think I also learned a lot during that period of like self-sufficiency and stuff like that, to practice a ton while also being a full-time college student.
So back in those days, what did your daily routine look like then?
My daily routine, I wake up in the morning, and then basically just as quickly as possible, you know, eat some breakfast, and head down to the practice facility, start gaming. I think the biggest thing for me as a player is like just working on mechanics and improving in that realm. So I feel like I need to invest a lot of time in just grinding the game.
Yeah, speaking of staying strong, do you use rock climbing to complement what you're doing in esports, or is that just a separate thing that you enjoy doing?
Honestly, I haven't climbed in a while. I think it's become too time consuming at this point, where, you know, every minute is sort of accounted for. Or I feel like, you know, because I feel like it takes so much more time to go climb than just go for a run or something, and I feel like I can get the same, you know, fitness results. I think in esports you kind of accept that you're not looking to be like as fit as you can be. You just want to be, you know, healthy. I think a lot of people don't even get to that standard, but for me, my thought process is like, I just want to, you know, work out enough to feel good, be healthy, and not be worried about health issues, you know, rearing their ugly head.
Yeah, no, speaking of, I was gonna say, the only time I've seen you was on TV or whatever, and on a TD screen. I mean, you look thin, so I'm just assuming you do something to not let yourself go, unless you wanted to let yourself go. But that's enough of that. You know what I mean?
No, I don't want to let myself. I mean, I think there's a point where it's like there's no, you know, just because you're committed to esports doesn't mean you can't live a healthy lifestyle. You know, it's just a matter of willpower. You know, coming home at the end of a long day and getting on the treadmill instead of sitting on the couch. Just that simple. You know, it's tough to do always, but I think it's like super important to performance. You know, even in esports, it's like I think if you're fit and healthy, you're probably going to be your best performance relative to if you weren't. You know, there's just no. It seems to me that it's just pretty straightforward, right? If you're healthy, you're probably going to be performing better. Probably going to have a longer career. That's a big one, actually. It's just a longer career. You know, I think people underestimate how bad injuries are in terms of ending people's esports careers. You know, a lot of people take an injury and are just kind of never the same, or just, you know, their career's over at that point and they're easily forgotten. But definitely something that's fresh in your mind as an esports player. You know, you really want to focus on being healthy and your posture being healthy, and, you know, getting a workout can help that as well. You know, making sure you're not getting stress injuries or anything.
Yeah. Posture makes sense. I tend to slouch a little bit, but anyways, how did you why did you pick Houston as your team instead of like Seoul or any other?
Well, one thing, I couldn't have really joined the full Korean teams, although I've always sort of been interested in that. I think it'd be like an exciting challenge to like learn Korean and play with Koreans and just completely, you know, be a foreigner, you know, in another team. I think that'd be really exciting and interesting. And, you know, who knows, maybe at some point in my player career I'll have the opportunity, but I think for now I couldn't be happier, you know, anywhere else. I think I joined Houston, or, you know, in the beginning when I was setting out, I didn't know what team I was going to join. Still trying to like field offers, trying to get offers. My number one concern was roster. I was like, I just want to play with the best players I can play with. I want to find the players that I think have the most potential, both as teammates in terms of their approach to the game, and also just as individuals, like very, very high individual skill, very, very high, you know, work ethic. So I think for me, I was insanely happy to get an offer to the Houston Outlaws, because I knew when I signed, I knew that Muma and Coolmat were already on the team, and they were like, I was locked in at that point. I was like, well, I really hope you get these other few players. You know, I was really pulling. I was like, try and get Raucus. You know, and he had a ton of offers, of course. But, you know, when I knew Muma and Coolmat were signed, I was like, well, this is definitely going to be the best Western team. I just felt like they were the best tank duo, the best individual tanks in their roles in the West. So for me, it was just like, that's the roster that I believe in, and that's the roster that I want to be a part of. And then I think it's also really paid double dividends, because even the players I didn't know as well, you know, like the FNR GFE boys besides Coolmat, I think I've been really, really impressed. I think Banny especially has impressed me a ton in terms of how quickly he learned a new character. I think people are really, you know, you don't get the spotlight as a Mercy player ever, but I watched Banny go from like completely new, never played Mercy, and like made a bunch of mistakes all the time in scrims and matches. Was just like a non-consistent player to, you know, 3 weeks later, he's like the most consistent Mercy player, has some of the least deaths on Mercy of anyone in the league, has some of the best movement. I'm like watching his movement, like, oh my God, that's insane. Like, you know, he really is min-maxing the character in just a couple weeks of really intensive practice. So to me, that showed that he actually took it seriously, that he actually, a lot of players were just like, oh, whatever, Mercy, this character's so dumb, I just refuse to try. And then, you know, it looks terrible. They're throwing for their team. You know, you have a lot of players who just shouldn't be in the Overwatch League on Mercy, you know, should probably stick to their main character because they're just completely terrible at Mercy. And Banny really wasn't one of those players, you know. It's not like he had any more experience on Mercy than anyone else. He just wasn't, you know, lazy, honestly. I think that's another thing that kind of pisses me off about the Overwatch League is there are all these teams that are like, yeah, you know, well, when this patch is over, then we'll be really good. It's like, what do you mean? Are you just lazy? You just like won't learn the new characters? Like, I don't know. I don't really understand that argument.
I mean, Mercy players kind of did get the spotlight when you had Gravs and Genji ults and sextuples and then quintuples, and then heroes never die apparently. But I like it. I mean, this patch heroes do die. The hell out of here.
Yeah.
Obviously, you guys are still in the y'all are still in the Valk patch, no? In the res?
We're done now.
Yeah.
Like,
So now
stage 2 will be on the new non-Valk, or the new Mercy nerf, Junkrat nerf patch. Which I think is definitely good for the game, and I don't think that the stage 1 was necessarily the most healthy meta, but I do think it's a little weird that there were like professional players who still couldn't play the characters that they were playing on stage. They still like obviously weren't practicing them. Like, you know, I'm not gonna name any names, but there are definitely players who are like we're underperforming so hard on these characters where it's like it seems clear to me that they're not practicing them, because like, you know, there's ladder players who are just better than them and decision making and mechanics. So that was a little interesting to see, but I'm really happy. I think that my team didn't you know, just because the meta is like a little weird, you know, everyone rose to the challenge of like, you know, how do I play perfectly? Like, what's the best way to play? There's no, I think it's a very like Western mentality to be like, oh, well, whatever, it's out of our control, you know, we're not good at these heroes, instead of, you know, having the mindset of that's the hero I need to play. How do I become the best at it? Which I think is like the Korean mindset. You watch them adapt to the meta over time. It's like clear that there's no, I don't know, no reservations about playing what it takes to get the win.
If we talk about okay, I want to ask you this first. Have you ever, in any of the seasons from season 1 to 8, flexed to Mercy in a competitive game?
Yeah, I played Mercy a few times. I actually like playing Mercy. I think she's a pretty fun healer, just because she's like a lot of min-maxing potential. Yeah, like always damage boosting the right target or healing the right target and always being in the right position. There's like, those are actually it's quite difficult to actually do that perfectly, to really be a perfect Mercy player. Like, you're always in the right position relative to sidelines and spam. You're always on the right target, whether that be heals or damage, you know. And the answer to that question isn't always clear. You know, sometimes it's, even when you have hurt players, it's more important to be damage boosting, you know, one player so that he can get kills and bring you back into the fight, rather than trying to heal tanks that, you know, maybe just an unwinnable effort. So there's a lot of decision making there that I think is pretty subtle, but it's still, you know, really, really important on Mercy. It's just a lot of people don't think about it, you know, just hold left click or whatever. But
yeah,
the character is definitely, I think, has a lot more than meets the eye in terms of like really applying it to its potential.
So the term boosted Mercy main doesn't really that doesn't really work, or what?
I mean, you can be boosted on Mercy, but I think you distinguish yourself on Mercy in a very different way than you distinguish yourself on McCree, right? You distinguish yourself on McCree by clicking on them on the head, but Mercy is about, you know, not dying. It's about, you know, being in the right place at the right time, making the right decision at that moment. Ultimate decisions, res decisions, you know, there's a lot of decision making on Mercy. It's just, you know, it's not always clear what the right move is or what the right play is. I think a lot of players just instantly go for a res when a player dies, instead of considering, you know, is this a safe res? Is it worthwhile? How close am I to Valkyrie? Could I just farm Valk and get a safe res by insta-resing? You know, there's all these questions I think that a lot of people just don't ask and play the game more straightforwardly. But you know, watching good Mercy players, it's clear that they're really thinking about these decisions and, you know, actually taking their time, not like just, you know, using abilities for the sake of using abilities. And I think it really shows in terms of the success of their teams.
All right. Well, congrats. Well, I mean, to be fair, I totally always respected Mercies, you know, totally. If we talk on mindset for a second, let's go back to the World Cup, actually. Everyone wanted USA versus Korea in the final match, but you got them in the first match. But what was your mindset there? Because I felt like you were the only one who would like, this is good because we beat this team, this Korean team right now, and then we win the tournament overall.
I think all of us in Team USA, it was like, it didn't really matter when we played them. I think I know the viewership was the highest during our game, higher than the grand finals, South Korea against Canada, because I think a lot of people feel like we were the only people who can a real challenge to the South Korean team, and I kind of felt that way myself. So my feeling going into it was that this can only help us, because, you know, they're not going to know the way we play. They're not going to have any other, you know, if we played 2 series, you know, leading up to the grand finals against South Korea, then they'd have a lot more tape to review. They could see how we play. They could see our strategies. But, you know, playing them first round was just like fresh. Like, you just get to, you know, nobody knows what to expect. And I think that environment, a little more chaos, definitely benefited us. I think it was insane how close that series was to being a 3-0 for us. Yeah. You know, we really came close to winning Eichenwald, a couple of really small mistakes. And, you know, the same was true on Hanamura. So I think,
oh, by the way, Junker was fire. Hanamura.
Yeah, it was honestly a great series, you know, and at the end of the day, I can't complain, but it really did feel good to come that close. I think like that was a series where it was just like clear that there were so many moments that we could have won it, and they just barely swung it back. You know, I think it was clear to the spectators, it was clear to us, you know, that was a clash of the Titans. We obviously felt bad as we wanted to win, you know, felt like we could have won, felt like we were that close, but at the same time, it does feel really good to, you know, have a really insanely close series with some of the best players in the game. I think even they were not expecting us to be that much of a challenge, and I think we really surprised the world and surprised South Korea with that regard. But hopefully next year we can close it out. I really do think that, there's no reason the Western team, especially next year, can't win the World Cup. I actually think next year is our year.
Yeah,
in a very big way.
You know, everyone says,
because I think ultimately, like, the chaos and the disorganization of the World Cup kind of plays the favor of Western teams, right?
Yeah.
It depends. I wonder, I guess, what roster will be going next year. If it'll be like a full team, a full South Korean roster, or if they'll, you know, pick and choose from different rosters like we did last time.
Well, I guess time will come out. By the way, Hanamura, rip your soldier ult, by the way. I mean, literally every time you pull the visor out, you got assassinated. As it feels bad.
Yeah, I mean, it's just really clean play from the South Korean squad, and you know, a little bit weak positioning for me. There are a couple of plays that I didn't expect, a couple should have expected, but ultimately they just, you know, they're a really good team, right? They knew exactly how to put the pressure on. You know, they weren't afraid to go for plays when it was time to make a play. You know, just an insanely talented squad. So for us, it was just, you know, kind of like bashing your head against the wall, and kind of just sucks to play the game when the enemy team's Widowmaker has 80% scoped accuracy, but
is meta.
You know, you got to just do your best. I will say I think we played admirably considering the game that Flower had. You know, it's pretty hard to win when their Widows just pop up. Yeah, Flower had an absolutely insane series there. I'm definitely excited to play against him in the Overwatch League. I think he's going to be a huge contender, a huge player for the New York Excelsior.
Oh, you were... I'm sorry to bring back dark times, but Hanamura, you were pretty close. What was the voice comms going on like when they were stalling that last point out? Because
we got unlucky in a couple ways. I know Raucus got rezzed, and Zunba had just been desuited, so he popped bomb just to get back into his mech. And unfortunately, Raucus got rezzed at like exactly the same time and couldn't. And just the position that he got rezzed in.
I saw that. Yeah, first point.
Instantly died twice, just as the invulnerability ended. So honestly, pretty unlucky. He was like 96% chance trans. So I think we would have just won if that didn't happen. Sinatra like blinked to chase SVB and like caught a stick on that wasn't intended for him, because he was like chasing the tracer frag and didn't have recall. And then, you know, SVB cleans up Adam, and then from there it's just kind of over. We're down 3. But so I think kind of a few unlucky things happened successively to us. You know, that was a feels bad, man. But definitely, you know, just major props to them. They're all really clutch players, and you know, you have to be more prepared, more organized in the clutch, not letting things like that happen. Which unfortunately we weren't. So, you know, it feels bad, man. Could have won it all. I honestly think we probably needed to win the first 3 maps to win the series, because I think Gibraltar and Oasis both really played to their strengths relative to ours. I don't know. We could have won it in the tiebreak, I guess, but I think for us it was definitely hard because we're, you know, way less experienced than them. You know, they were basically like a half of 2 different teams, and they had a lot more time to like work together and practice. So I think for us it was kind of, you know, we felt like we really did need to get momentum in the series and carry that forward. But maybe that was a misstep by us. You know, maybe we should have just been more prepared to gut it out over a long series. I think next year that'll definitely be the case. It'll be a little bit more preparation from the US team, considering the Overwatch League is kind of the perfect training ground for stuff like that.
Yeah, well, speaking of the Overwatch League and still a mindset, I gotta tell you, man, the beginning of the Outlaws season didn't start out too great, but then there was this patch when you guys just like won everything. So what was the switch there from like, okay, we're just losing out, to okay, now we're gods?
I think it was just like an effort thing and a mindset thing. I think after we took our first losses in week 1, we were just like, you know, super dissatisfied with that. We like didn't want that to be the way our stage 1 went. So we really just reapproached the game, both on a personal level and on a team level, and just like really upped our commitment level and our effort level, both, you know, in game and scrims, and then also out of game strategic research in our own personal practice. I think everybody kind of took that as a kick in the pants and just was like, you know, it's time to do this for real. So I think after week 1, we really had like a huge motivation spike from those losses. We were just like, no, we're not gonna let that happen again.
Well, as an individual, do you think we as individuals limit our ability on how great we can actually be? Like, whether even if it's just like your skill in general.
Sorry, what?
Do you think we as individuals limit our ability to be as great as we can?
I mean, I think the only limit to your ability is like your discipline, the amount of work you're willing to put in for me, it's just like a straight up equation. It's like the more work you put in, the more skill you're gonna have at the end of the day. Your brain is complicated, but also kind of simple in the sense that if you just do things over and over and over again, you get better at them. And everyone knows that. It's like there's no secret. Everything in the world works
it's
like
funny.
that.
Everyone knows that.
To me, but not everyone really knows that.
But I mean,
everybody knows that in a sense, but they don't really think about that. And like what that really means at a deep level is that if you really wanted to be great at something, it's not a question of like talent or potential or anything like that. I kind of don't like those words because I feel like they just distract you from the reality is that no matter how much talent or how little talent you have, the only thing that you can control is how much work you put in and how much discipline you have. So if you want to be the best you can be, then you just have to put in as much work as you can put in.
Yeah.
And what that looks like in your life is sort of up to you and up to obviously up to everyone to work as hard as they're willing to work. But I think if that's a very high level of effort and that you're willing to put in, then I think it's very likely that you'll be successful in esports and in anything. So if people limit their potential only because maybe they don't believe in themselves or they have, or they forget that if they just put the time in, they'll get there for whatever reason.
All right.
Sometimes it is pretty tough to remember. Have a bad day, you're like, man, I just suck. But just gotta keep resetting.
It's 250 SR drop days. You know what, man? Screw this. I'm gonna play my alt. I'm making my alt account my main account from now on, man, because I suck and my teammates suck. And we're getting boosted.
Yeah, I mean, you can't be worried about. Can't be worried about SR. The thing about ranked, I think this is a bit weird. Is
okay, hold on.
Yeah, a lot of games you don't have control over.
You kids say don't worry about SR, right? You're a top 500 player saying don't worry about SR. What up for us diamonds and masters down here trying to be low? Like
my point is you can't sweat the little things. Like you can't sweat like a lot. Like the way you can't let a loss turn into a loss streak. And I think that always happens because people like put too much stock in a game. They're like, oh man, that was so winnable and whatever XYZ reasons. But if you honestly just have like a really mental reset between every game, you just don't like win or lose. You just kind of keep playing each game as if it's the first game of the day. Yep. I think that mindset makes it really hard to have streaky games, like wins or losses, really. I think you'll still get win streaks because you'll still get lucky and you'll still be playing well sometimes and be on a roll. But loss streaks are way less prevalent if you just take time between games. Like, don't instantly queue up, take a minute, breathe, relax, be like, all right, I'm resetting, especially if it's a really tilting game. Like, you have some sim players or whatever, you just like, oh my God, just give yourself 5 minutes, take a walk, like things like that actually make such a big difference. Stretch out a little. Like I think those those like little practices in real life can really make a difference in the game, how you play. Just a mental reset.
I guess I got a question. How did you personally climb the ladder? Because I'm still trying to figure out here, like, what am I doing? Like, what am I actually doing here? Because like, there's some days where I'll climb 250 points, whatever, and there's some days where I lose this 250 points, and I'm like, what am I doing? Because like, I played from, let's just say 4 hours, for example, and I literally didn't move. It's like solo queue feels like a 50-50 or an 80-20 on some days.
Yeah, I mean, well, you're running on a treadmill. That's what ranked matchmaking is. So, if you're discovering things at a certain place, like whether or not that accurately rate your skill is the only way to prove that, I guess, is to go out there and like play to your skill level. And there's some games where it just you just got unlucky, right? And like your teammates collectively had such a low impact that no matter how high your personal impact was, you couldn't win. But that doesn't mean you can't always, push yourself higher and can't always say, well, I could have done more. So I think it's like a big thing is just having the mindset that every game is winnable, that even when you have symmetric players or, whatever, some tilting team composition, that you can still, go out there and, have a really high game impact and be satisfied with that, whether you're winning or you're losing. I think that's a big difference too, is, if you feel like you had a really good game and then you lost, don't be disappointed in that. Don't be like, oh man, what a shitty game just because you lost. If you went out there and you played really well and you like really worked on the heroes you wanted to work on and felt like you had the game impact you wanted to have, and then your team just really couldn't close it out, then I feel like that's not, you should feel bad about that. You should feel good about that, because that's like a big sign of improvement. is that you're actually having, you know, really good, effective games. And you could still ask the question, you know, how could I have done better? You know, what could I learn from that game going forward? But I think one thing is just don't put too much stock in one individual game. Like, just, you know, keep grinding it out, because at the end of the day, it really is just practice. I think for me, it's like, you know, I started off in top 500, but that was just because I was a TF2 player, right? So I was already better than almost anyone in the game when I first got it, which is just, you know, it's like, if you didn't play 5,000 hours of TF2, then that's probably not the case. You got to put the work in Overwatch. But it's still very achievable. It's just, you know, 5,000 hours takes a long time. You gotta trust the process.
You be sarcastic with 5,000 hours, or was it actually?
No, actually 5,000 hours.
Oh, was that okay? Damn. If you could give 14-year-old Jake,
Steam, or it's like 4,500 or something.
If you could give 14-year-old mini Jake any advice, what would it be?
I think the biggest thing is just that, you know, hard work will get you where you want to go. I think that's like a really cliche piece of advice.
It is.
At the same time,
I mean, that piece of advice feels like just a classic, you know, thing to say, but, you know, makes sense. Damn.
Yeah, I mean, it's not what anyone wants to hear, right? Because there's no, you know, everyone wants, there's these secret tips the pros don't want you to know. And like, you know, as much as I can sympathize with that, you know, because I, you know, felt very much the same way. And there are some things you can learn about the game that maybe you didn't know before that might give you a little edge, you know, little subtle things, but they're so microscopic, you know, they're so marginal that the thing that really makes you better at the game is just investing more time and being really self-critical. I think is another big thing. Is, you know, don't just play the game, you know, autopilot, go. Just, you know, if at every moment you say like, well, is this a position I even want to be in? Why is this position I want to be in? You know, what characters are they on? You know, really conceptualizing the game and considering maybe this way that I've always played this map is not the right way to play this map. So, you know, trying not to fall into these habits that are just habits, you know, for the sake of habits. They're not it's not like an actual game plan. You're not, you know, playing around the comp or playing around the situation. You're just kind of playing the map the way you've always played the map. I think things like that can be really negative to someone's improvement. You know, you have to kind of stay out of those habits, you know, stay reactive to the situation and in the moment, that, you know, kind of do what the game demands in the moment. And I think that is like a really hard thing to do. Like, if you can actually play the game for like 4 hours and constantly be focused and thinking, is this the best way to play? Did I make any mistakes there? What should I do next? If you're actually considering all those things, it's very hard to play the game for a long period of time because it's very like mentally taxing. If you're putting in that much effort though, like, improvement is just like a natural result.
Huh.
You still breathing?
Yeah, I'm breathing, man. I'm just
trying
to feel like is the term carry on DPS an actual thing?
I mean, you can, but you can carry on every role. Like, you know, if I were to go into like a diamond game and play Winston, I would have like a 90% win rate. Like, it's not about
that's disrespect to us, but okay.
I mean, but it's the reality. Like, you can hard carry on. I mean, there's some characters that you really can't carry on. Like, you really have low game impact on, like Lucio and stuff. But then, you know, how are there still Lucios in the top 500 that only play Lucio? It's like, well, they're probably pretty damn good. Like, they probably are like super hard to kill, and they're, you know, somehow managing to get frags, you know, supporting their team really effectively. You know, they're not carrying the game, quote unquote, but just always being in the right spot, always having the right timing to drop the beat, farming beat really fast, not dying. Like, those skills end up in them winning games. And, you know, that's why they're at the top of the ladder. You know, for like Winston, right, it's like what your decision making about when to jump, when not to jump, where to jump, you know, how to abuse map geometry, who to be attacking, like all those millions of decisions that you make in, you know, 1 minute of playing the game really add up, I think, to your effectiveness. You know, there's a lot more into the game. Like, DPS, I think, is the most straightforward because it's kind of like hit the shots, don't hit the shots. But even then, there's still a lot more under the surface because a lot of people don't think about things like their positioning relative to their team, relative to the enemies. You know, where should I be on the map when I take this fight? So, you know, even if you hit 100% of your shots, you might just die, right? Like, that's why you see in this game, there's like people who are actually cheating in like Masters. It's like, you know, like actually cheating. Like, they're using an aimbot and they're not in Grandmaster or anything, because this game is like, it doesn't matter how good you are. It doesn't matter how good you are, like traditional FPS skills. I mean, it does matter to an extent, and there's times where you can really leverage it, but you can also completely play around there. Like the fact that you can beat players who are literally aimbotting is like, you know, in Counter-Strike, you aren't gonna win if they're aimbotting. Like, let me tell you, like, there's just nothing you can do. Like, they're just gonna you're gonna one-shot you every time you peek them. Like, there's just no answers to that in Counter-Strike, because the game is like if you have better aim than them, then you just win almost every time, especially if you're cheating. And I think Overwatch is unique in that, you know, like you could actually be cheating and not be that effective, and not be as effective as a top player who is just, you know, using their ability. Even if they're hitting way less shots than you, you know, they're still like making the right decisions. I think that's a big thing about Overwatch is people forget is that it's a MOBA, probably more so than it is a first-person shooter. Yeah. Especially at a competitive level, it feels like the MOBA elements, like team decision making, ultimate economy, those things win you a lot more games than head clicking.
Well, I don't want to hold you much longer than what I need to, but I do want to ask, do you play, I know you're a flex DPS, but do you play every DPS from, like, what is your actual hero pool? Like, is it from Doomfist to Widow, or is it like certain characters in that area?
I can play all the DPS to a reasonable level. Like, I play basically every character in the game in a reasonable level, but in terms of like what I would play in a pro match, probably Tracer, Genji, Soldier, McCree, Pharah. Play every DPS except like Widow and Doomfist, pretty much. Or all the offense defense characters except Widow and Doomfist. They're the only two that I don't really play. My McCree is pretty weak, I would say. I would always prefer to play Soldier. But I think beyond that, I could play everything. I play Mei, I play Hanzo, play Bastion and Torb. My Torb actually is big. You know, people don't get to see the Torb every day, but I got crazy left clicks.
How's your Genji game do?
It's okay. You know, I'm actually not playing Genji too much these days. I'm really working on Tracer. I think it's super hard to Genji and Tracer are two characters that are both like really difficult to master. Like they both require a huge time investment. And you'll see a few players, those players like Prophet, who are like really effective on both Genji and Tracer. But I think that's incredibly rare. I think the vast majority of players who are strong on one of those characters are only strong on one of them, right? That they've really invested time into one of them. So for me, that's becoming Tracer now. I'm like really working on Tracer, trying to be a more effective player for the team, which is really weird, I think, because there was a character that I always just considered out of my pool. Because on previous teams, my last team I had Train. You would always play it. On Team USA, I was Statra. Obviously, I'm not going to play it over him. So I think for me, it was like a character I never considered picking up. But recently, I think it makes a lot more sense with Linkser. You know, there's a lot of times when I should be on Tracer. But it's also cool because we both have Tracer in the pool. So, you know, depending on which one of us wants to play a comfort main DPS, the other can always flex Tracer. So I'm just trying to work on that so that I'm ready to do that when the time demands it. It's interesting that I've had to like shrink my hero pool for the Overwatch League. Like you have to specialize further and just be really, really good at the stuff you can play, rather than trying to play everything.
I mean, yeah, I feel like Genji's also the most mechanical DPS ult, just because you can actually F it up. And by that, I mean you can lose the target. But in the long run, do you think it'd be more worth mastering Genji or Hanzo? I know Hanzo's never really been meta. And Genji's
Hanzo, the problem is that no one has ever been able to become consistent at Hanzo. And other people are consistent at Genji, right? They're actually, they're very consistent. But even Raxu is like probably the best Hanzo player in the game, and he can't play it all the time, right? So, yeah, you know, no matter how good you are, it's just a fundamentally inconsistent character, just by its nature. The other thing is, I think it's also much harder to play in competitive than pubs because people don't 1v1 you in competitive, or like they won't 1v1 a Hanzo unless they're, you know, really advantaged or something. Like, and that's how you like succeed on Hanzo a lot of the time, is you just win 1v1s by hitting a headshot that you know, it's just a really difficult shot, but you just hit it. But the reality is that in a competitive game, you know, people are going to be like swarming you with Winston and Diva, and like it's not going to matter how good you are. You're just never going to get an opportunity because you're playing Hanzo. You know, his lack of mobility, I think, is really crushing. So definitely in the current meta, he just has no place. I think maybe in other metas he'll have a place. I think maybe like King's Row, you'll see him, but he's still pretty effective attacking King's Row. You know, there's some niche situations for him, but he's a pretty weak character against the current meta.
Damn, I feel like listen, all right, listen, I can let you go, but I got one more question here. One more question. All right, this is for me personally more. All right, so Season 8, pretty much for me, has been all about, okay, I was gonna say something that's gonna be cringy. When I'm Reaper, right? Reaper man, by the way, Hidden the Blossoms, Death Walks Among You, all of that. There's this one character in the game that really pisses me off. Alright, that should be removed from the game. And that's no other than stupid Blackwatch McCree looking ass. What did I do against the McCree, man? Like, yeah, like literally.
On Reaper? You get off a Reaper, dude.
Don't get off
Reaper.
Reaper.
Just
Screw that.
sucks
Man.
against McCree.
McCree, dude.
Reaper is one of the worst characters in the game. Well, not one of the worst, but he's one of like. He just has like one of the least amount of plays you can make. Like it's McCree's like the most straightforward hero in the game.
Yeah, I know you hold
McCree's like, he's like more versatile and stuff, but Reaper is just like you literally only do one thing, and you do that thing pretty well, like close range brawling. Like you do that pretty effectively, but your escape is like pretty weak in the sense that it only works if you're around your team because like it's super easy to just chase you down. Like McCree could just roll after you and then like flashbang you right at the end of it, and you're just dead because it's super, like when it's gonna end. They know when it's gonna end. There's not much you can do about that. So I think any character that has like playmaking potential can really shut down Reaper. Even something like Tracer can do pretty well. Reaper's just like it's more of a response to an enemy team picking like an overly tanky composition or something than it is like a really valuable DPS. I think he's found some effectiveness on like some maps, but right now it feels like mobility is at like a huge premium, and Reaper is one of the worst in that regard.
It's because of these
like even McCree has better mobility.
Well, it's because of these retarded reasons that I've had to pick up the stupid Genji. I never wanted to main Genji, mainly because it feels like everyone's a Genji Tracer, McCree Widow main, and I actually wanted to find a DPS character that at least made me feel half unique when playing him. Like if I play Tracer, I just, it's like, okay, cool, I can kill you, but it just feels like every other character, whereas. But anyways, man, you got any quick tips for any aspiring 9-year-old Genji mains out there who every time they take out the sword just lose targets?
Practice. One thing is you might want to turn up your sensitivity. I felt like my sensitivity was like too low for a long time. I think if you can't really quickly 180 and still have mouse control to the point where you're actually like aiming, if you're 180ing and your mouse is at like the very top right corner of your mouse pad, then you don't have mouse control, not really. So practicing that 180 and that 90 degree, like practicing those big like turnaround flicks is super, super important on Genji, because if you're blading, you're constantly dashing through people and turning around to finish them off. So the more consistent you are with just that exactly 180 degree spin, the faster you are on Genji at like, acquiring new targets and just cleaving them up with your blade. So I would say like really you want to up your sensitivity. I use 4800 EDPI. I think that's an effective sense because it allows me to turn around pretty easily. But you have to find what works for you in terms of something you can control, but it's fast enough. But if you can't like really quickly 180 and be close enough to the center of your mouse pad, or if you're like fat, you can practice doing the 180 and then doing a mouse reset so you can have better aim. Like those kind of things, just like the really like rote memorization helps a lot on Genji. Just like dashing through people and then like you always 180 melee at the end of that, just to get that extra free melee damage, right? Like things like that are just, if you just practice them enough on bots, you'll start doing them in the real game on players, and they just increase your damage output by a bit.
All right, so those are tips from a freaking Overwatch League player, bro. Not just an Overwatch League player, but freaking Jake, Houston Outlaws. I'm gonna let you go now, but by the way, just know that your boy is repping the Houston Genji and the Fire skins. By the way, as half of Fire mains,
love to see it.
To all the hit scan mains out there, kissing ass. But thank you for joining us today. Really appreciate it. It was fun.
Yeah, no worries, man. Thanks for having me.
Good luck in the Overwatch League, man. I'm rooting for Houston, man. Houston for life. Even though I'm not from Houston, you're on it, so
H-Town.
Good luck, man. All right, peace. Thank you.
Thanks, man. Peace.
180 flicks. Alright, Buzz, so that was up a butter from Jake, aka Jordan Spieth of Overwatch. Thank you for joining us today.
He gave you a lot to think about.
Bro, that's mind blowing.
Right?
Now, I don't know if we can be friends because what he said of Reaper, but nah, I'm just kidding. Nah, he is right. I do get wrecked by any McCree with half a brain. But,
Yeah.
you know, that's when the Genji comes out. Or the Junkrat. But anyways, you
So how
guys
does it feel that you got to speak to Jake? Yo, man. Yo, mans.
feels good, man. That's a big feels good, man.
Yeah, he had a lot of good stuff.
Yeah.
Right? So now you're going to have to digest that, take it in.
Yeah, so you do know that this means I'm GM tomorrow, right? I have to play all night for that. Anyways, you boys keep chasing yours, I'm keep chasing mine. Because I got work to do. Holla at your boy. Peace.